Hey everybody, Twin Dad here, and welcome back to Magium. It's been a little bit since I made an episode of this, but I went and got a different computer, so I had to go and find where I left off, which didn't take me that long, but I was doing other videos, and yeah, I got sidetracked. But anyway, I'm going to try and put these out regularly until we actually finish the first book, and then I will start the second book sometime. I'm not even sure really how to get that. I read somewhere that you need to do something in the first one, but who knows. Anyway, let's continue on. After finishing our briefing and finding a way out of the ruins, we wave goodbye to Leo, the leopard. We grab our backpacks and we start heading towards our new objective. Flower is leading the way again, but this time she looks a lot less confident than before, and there's definitely some uneasiness in her voice as she speaks to us. Okay, so we'll need to follow this path for a few hours, until we reach the first crossroads, the girl says. After that, there isn't really a path to follow anymore, so you're going to have to stick close to me if you don't want to get lost. If you want to take food breaks, just tell me and we'll... Flower, Kate interrupts her. Why did you agree to come with us to the OGRE stronghold? Isn't it a little dangerous even for you to be heading straight into a monster territory like this? Well, yeah, but if I didn't agree to come with you, Alea would have just killed you. So what, Kate asks. If the fox killed us, then our blood wouldn't have been on your hands. Why would you go so far out of your way to help a group of complete strangers? Why not just let her kill us and go on with your business? I don't know. I just couldn't. Kate looks at her for a few seconds, then she smiles faintly. I see, she says. Flower, I believe we may have started off on the wrong foot this morning. Allow me to rectify that. She then holds out her hand to her and says, My name is Kate. Pleased to meet you. Flower looks somewhat taken back by Kate's sudden shift in attitude towards her, and she shakes her hand hesitantly. And my name is Rose, Rose says, as she offers her hand as well. I'm glad to have you with us, Flower. I'm Hadric, says Hadric, but you can just call me Dwarf. Either name will do. Flower takes a few steps back and is now starting to panic. I'm sorry, she says. I've never really been accepted into a group before. I have no idea what you're supposed to say in these situations. It's okay, Flower, Kate says. You don't need to say anything. Oh, Flower says, as she starts to calm down. That's a relief. I'll introduce myself. I'm Barry, I tell her. Pleased to meet you as well. Oh, thanks, Flower says, but I already got your name. It's pretty easy to remember. You can say that again, Hadric says, with a grin. It's probably also the reason why you can't throw a rock without hitting at least 3 berries in the western continent. He then starts laughing loudly, as he usually does. Is Barry a common name on other continents, Flower asks me. Yeah, I've met at least 24 berries in my lifetime. I don't really socialize much, I tell her. Well, to be fair, Hadric says, my name is also pretty common in the northern continent, especially for giants like myself. You're a giant, Flower asks? Shocked? Wow, I guess you really must have been the black sheep of your family, huh? Hadric laughs. You're not completely wrong there, little girl, but my family's opinion of me had nothing to do with my size, I'm afraid. The only reason I'm this small right now is because I've magically shapeshifted myself into a dwarf. I assure you that my height is well above the average among my peers. I've always meant to ask, Rose says, why did you choose to shape yourself into a dwarf and not a human? Wouldn't it have been easier to fight if you kept your body proportions at least somewhat similar to your original form? Remember how I said that my friends called me the dwarf, Hadric says? Well, that's because I spend most of my time drinking with the dwarves from the northern continent, and because I'm shapeshifting to one more often than not. Given that I've picked up on their accent and mannerisms in many years I've spent in their taverns, I thought it would raise less suspicion if I came disguised as a dwarf, instead of a human. Plus, I've always enjoyed fighting with a handicap, so that's always a bonus. He laughs again. Flower is now approaching Darren, and starts to address him. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, she tells him. Darren, he says. The name's Darren. You don't really like me very much, do you, Darren? The girl asks with a concerned tone. I like you just fine, he says. It's the Banshee I'm not very fond of. Oh, lighten up, Darren, Hadric says. What do you think she's going to do? Betray us all and join the ogres once we get through the stronghold? Actually, that's exactly what I'm worried about, Darren says. I think I'm starting to understand why Petal doesn't want to talk to you guys, Flower says. I imagine why. If I may ask, Kate says, how exactly did you and Petal come to share the same body? I've never heard of something like this happening before. Oh, Petal told me that our souls fused together during her awakening 20 years ago. Flower says, I don't really know the specifics of soul fusion, though you'll have to ask Petal about that. Wait, 20 years ago, Hadric asks. How old are you exactly? I'll be turning 30 next month, the girl says, smiling. Seeing as though Seeing the looks on our faces, she decides to give us a bit more context. A body stops aging after it's been possessed by a banshee, she says. I was just about to turn 10 when Petal awakened. I'm so sorry about what happened, Rose tells her. It must have been a terrible ordeal for a child to go through. No, you've got it all wrong, Flower says. The day Petal awakened was the happiest day of my life. At long last, I had someone here with me, to share my world with. You cannot possibly imagine the joy I felt when I realized that I no longer had to live my life alone inside my own mind. Space Soda Law, talk about active imagination. That'd be good. Live inside your own mind, you mean to say that you space out a lot? No, Flower shouts. I mean that I'm literally living inside my own mind. I've been doing so ever since I was born. Why doesn't anyone ever believe me? I believe you, Flower, Kate says. You do, the girl asks. Yes, because you're not the first person to tell me all of this. A friend of mine called... Kate pauses a bit before she begins to speak again. A friend of mine called Diane was in the same situation as you. She wasn't the only one. Many of the orphans from the Beacon of Hope were like this. The Lesthai called them ethereals. I think I got that right. People who identify with their souls instead of their bodies. Their souls, Rose asks? Yes, Kate says. Most people don't even know that they have a soul, because they only use their 5 senses to explore the world around them. However, the soul, which stores a person's memory and the very essence of their being, is actually being kept on the ethereal plane in a pocket universe that is usually referred to as their mind. While the human brain facilitates the interaction between the soul and the body, it is not the sole actor in the creation of an individual's personality, as most of scholars would have you believe. After a person dies, in the same way their body decomposes and eventually becomes one with the earth, the person's soul also decomposes into the ethereal matter and eventually becomes one with the ethereal plane once more. Hey, that's not what they taught me in giant school, Hadric says. As far as I know, once we die, our spirits are all supposed to go to the afterlife of whatever god we worship during our lives at the plane. Believe what you will, Kate tells him. I am merely reciting texts from old Lesthai books when I was allowed to read during my time at the Beacon, or at least the books that they were kind enough to have translated into the common language. Getting back to the subject at hand, the ethereals are different from other humans because they experience life from the perspective of their souls instead of their bodies. Imagine living your whole life inside a giant puppet, unable to get out, forced to use it every time you need to interact with a person from the outside world. I sometimes pretend that I use invisible strings to control my body, Flower says. It makes life in here a little bit more bearable. Most children will instinctively realize that something is different about ethereals, Kate continues, so they will usually isolate them from a very young age and not accept them in their groups. Being left alone both in their minds and in the outside world, ethereals are forced to find their own ways to cope with their situation. Some of them will simply start shutting the whole world out and isolate themselves even further. Others will make titanic efforts to integrate themselves into society, but the social awkwardness that they gain from years of isolation will always stand in their way. Living their life alone in their own minds also causes many ethereals to develop eccentric personalities, and to fixate on a hobby they like until they become exceptionally skilled at it. Diane used to love tinkering with complex devices for hours on end. Flower, I assume that your chosen hobby would be acrobacy. Oh yes, Flower says, I absolutely love it. I used to be in a circus when I was little, and since then, there's rarely been a day where I've neglected to train my acrobatic skills. Oh, that's pretty interesting, actually. While your acrobatic skills may be noteworthy, Kate says, they are by far eclipsed by your natural affinity for magic. Do you know why that is? I'm not sure. Petal always told me that I am learning magic at a much faster rate than should be humanly possible. Is this because I'm ethereal too? Yes. The ethereal plane is closer in nature to the magical plane than the earthen plane. For this reason, your unique perspective allows you to understand magic much more naturally than the rest of us. Being ethereal does not grant you your magical powers upon birth, but those that are also born as mages are fated to become extremely powerful. This is why the Lesthai from the Beacon of Hope made it their mission to capture as many ethereal orphans as possible, in the hopes that their experiments would have a greater chance of success. My friend Diane and her brother were both ethereals, and they turned to be quite the prodigies. I think I'm finally starting to understand why Petal was so surprised to find me inside my own mind when she awakened, Flower says. If I were to venture a guess, Kate says, I'd say that your unexpected fusion with the Banshee's soul also came as a result with your rather unique circumstances. Normally, a Banshee would find the soul defenseless when she invades her host's mind, but you must have been waiting for her, armed and ready. Given that your terrain advantage, she had no choice but to settle for a compromise. Flower gasped loudly, all of a sudden. Oh no, I just realized something, she says. The beacon you spoke of, in the experiments, she pauses. Are you an artificial mage, she asks. I am. Why do you ask? Oh gods, you must have had it so much worse than I did. At least I had Petal's experience to rely on when we were being chased down by Banshee hunters. She taught me a lot of survival tips that had come in handy along the years. Would you like me to share some with you? I suppose it couldn't hurt. Great, Flower says, as her cheerful smile returns to her face once again. I'll try to remember everything I know on the way to the Ogre Stronghold. Come on, follow me. We can talk more while we walk. Ethereals, huh? Araka says to herself, while we start our long march towards our objective. That's a pretty cool sounding name. I might actually start using it myself from now on. We spend the next few hours following the path that Flower told us about. During this time, Darren and Hadrick started a bit of a competition to see which one of them could tell the most interesting story from their adventures, while Kate and Flower started sharing their similar life experiences with each other, which seemed to bring them a little closer. Once we reached the crossroads around noon, we all stopped in our tracks, and Darren started addressing Rose, with a serious look on his face. Rose, I think you should take this path and head to your hometown as soon as possible. Don't worry about us and the callers, we'll be fine. The sick people in your town will all be waiting for you. She can't leave, Kate says. Remember what the leopard told us before we left? If any two of the callers get further away than 3 miles from each other, then all of us will start to get electrical shocks of increasing intensity surging throughout their bodies. If the callers get more than 4 miles away from each other, then we all get killed. The Lethathai are the ones who originally designed these devices, and this was a measure they took to keep their prisoners in check. Rose, I'm so sorry. I did not know it would come to this. I should have tried to stop you when you were offered to come with me yesterday. This is all my fault. Kate, you had no way of knowing this would happen, Rose says. Even with this detour, I'll still arrive ahead of my original schedule. As long as we keep following the direct route we've been using up until now, there's no need to apologize for any of this. We're friends, remember? Not knowing exactly how to answer, Kate simply nods at her. And we all decide to take a small break to eat some food, because we haven't really eaten much since our imprisonment. After I finished my meal, I noticed that Flower, who wasn't particularly hungry, had decided to make use of this time to practice her fire magic, by shooting fireballs at various rocks lying on the side of the road. You sure do like to train, huh? I asked Flower as I approach her. Oh no, I'm not training now, she says. I just like blowing stuff up. How old did you say you were again? I'm almost 30. Then why are you acting like a 10-year-old? Ah, it's just ignorant. You do realize that your brain technically never developed... Wow. You do realize your brain technically never developed past the age of 10, right? La 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 la, I'm not listening, the girl starts shouting as she covers her ears and starts singing. I rest my case, I say. Then I decide to change the subject. So, what did you do with Araka? I see you're not wearing the amulet around your neck. Oh, she said she wanted to socialize with the group, so I handed her to Hadrick for a while, since he's the only one who doesn't seem to have an aversion towards her. She then points to Hadrick, who is holding the amulet in his right hand and having a conversation with Araka about ogres and ways to kill them. It's a shame that I won't be able to transform back to a giant when we reach the stronghold, Hadrick says. It's been a while since I fought some ogres. I really miss hearing the satisfying sound of them getting squished under my feet. Well, at least you'll get to see the looks on their dumb faces when you'll be sending their own fireballs back at them, Araka says. Actually, ogres are so stupid that I doubt they even have the time to realize what happened before they get burnt to ashes. Both Araka and Hadrick start laughing loudly at the same time. You know I'm pretty good at teleporting magic, Araka says. If you free me from the amulet, I could teleport a few ogres here, and we could have a fun little practice run before the main event. What do you say? Nah, Hadrick says with a grin. Well, it was worth a shot, Araka says. I'm so glad that Araka finally found someone she can relate to, Flower says, looking genuinely happy for her. I don't really have a lot in common with her, so we don't talk all that much, and Petal hates her guts. That begs the question, I tell her. Why are you still keeping her with you? I would like to ask the same question, Kate says as she approaches us. Wouldn't it be better just to throw her at the bottom of the lake and be done with her? I don't really feel comfortable traveling with her at my side. Her very aura sends chills down my spine. I can't throw her away, Flower says, with an uncharacteristically serious expression on her face. Why not? Kate asks. Because she can free herself from the amulet if we leave her unsupervised. She barely has access to any magic while trapped in there, but with what little she has, she'll be able to generate a very small explosion as long as she's left alone to channel the spell for a few hours. So what? Kate says. If she gets away, then it's not your problem anymore. Wrong, Flower says. If she gets away, she'll become everybody's problem. She's that powerful, I ask her. Yes, she is. Have you heard of the Still Winter? Only bits and pieces, I tell her. I heard that it was a great war between the Lesathai and the Stillwaters on this continent, some 600 years ago. That's pretty much the main gist of it, Flower says. What I'm betting you haven't heard, though, is that the fact that Araka used to be the leader of the Stillwaters. A Banshee? Kate asks, leading an army of Stillwaters? She wasn't alone, Flower asks. She was fused with a Stillwater guy, in the same way I am now with Petal, from what I hear. Our two cases are the only two occurrences of soul fusion in our history. After what you've told me, Kate, I'm willing to bet this Stillwater Araka fused with was an ethereal as well. Hold on, I tell her. Can Banshees possess male hosts? I thought they always went for women. That's because all Banshees are female spirits, Kate tells me. And in order to minimize the risk during their awakening, they tend to only possess female bodies so that their magical auras are closer in nature to those of their hosts. I assume that a spirit as powerful as Araka has no need to take such precautions. That's right, Flower says. Araka was so powerful, in fact, that it took the combined effort of Alea and the Creator to put a stop to her rampage. The Creator is that guy who is considered the founder of the Varathia's current civilization, right? I ask her. Yeah, that's him, Flower says. So, as I was saying, the Creator and the Fox managed to defeat Araka, but only temporarily. Even they weren't powerful enough to kill her outright, but they managed to cast a very complex spell on her, which forbids her to possess any of the humanoid races for the next 600 years. She was For the next 600 years, she was forced to possess only animals, which was too weak for her to be able to use her full powers. So if she's already been roaming free for 600 years, why is she more of a problem now, I ask her. Because of me, Flower says. The nature of my magical aura has changed drastically since my soul has fused with Petals. And since my aura is so different now than from that of any other humans, the spell cast on Araka can't identify me as a human being anymore. And therefore, it does not prohibit her from possessing my body. Even if I were to throw Araka somewhere far away, she would just break out of the amulet and find her way to me sooner or later. And then it wouldn't be all over for just me and Petal. It might as well be the end for the entire continent, or maybe even the world. Wait, I tell her. You're saying that you have kept Araka under constant supervision so that you can dispel her explosion spell before she fully channels it. But what happens when you sleep? Oh, me and Petal sleep in turns, so our body technically never goes to sleep, Flower says. In fact, Petal's been sleeping ever since we left the ruins. But what if you both fall unconscious, Kate says. Well, at first we tried to see if there weren't any incantations we could use to automatically dispel any spells cast in an area for a few hours, but unfortunately all of them required the caster to be consciously focus on the spells they want to interrupt. Flower then turns towards Araka, who is subtly channeling an explosion spell while she was talking to Hadric, and she dispels it with the flick of her finger. Gods be damned, Araka shouts. Girl, do you have any eyes in the back of your head? See, Flower tells us, you can't dispel it unless you focus on her spell. Specifically, so. Instead of going for the automatic dispelling, we made a spell that continuously tries to wake us up in case we're both unconscious. And if it doesn't manage to do it within 2 hours, it kills us both. Which at least ensures that we'll all have a peaceful death, instead of Araka absorbing both our souls and then destroying the world. Wow, Kate says, that's quite a pragmatic approach. It was Petal's idea, Flower says, smiling. I thought as much, Kate says. Speaking of Petal, how have been getting along the past 20 years, so what's life in Araka like? Yeah, let's go with that one. Speaking of Petal, how have you been getting along the past 20 years? Oh, it's been a blast, Flower says. I've been having loads of fun over the years, and I think Petal's been enjoying it too. Or at least I think she has. It's kind of hard to tell because she's always grumpy and not very sociable. Yeah, I know the type, I tell her as I look towards Kate. Kate frowns at me, but she doesn't dignify my comment with a response. Hey, Flower, Darren shouts from a distance. Is this the right way to the Ogre Stronghold? No, Flower shouts back as she runs off towards where Darren is standing. If we keep going this way, we'll end up in the middle of a swamp. We need to turn left here, and then follow this trail until we get out of the forest. The six of us resume our journey, and Flower takes the lead once more. The girl has become much more reliable since we got to the ruins. She looks like she knows exactly where she's going, and she's regularly checking various landmarks that she's set in the past in order to make sure that we're still on the right track. She must have walked these paths many times throughout the years. As it starts to get dark, we decide to make camp in the valleys near a small river, where there aren't many trees that could hide any potential ambushers. Flower and Kate went to scout the area around the camp, while Darren and Hadrick, who both had several spare tents in their enchanted backpacks, are now busy setting them up. Since they said they didn't need any help, and there wasn't really anything else that needed doing, me and Rose sat ourselves down on a log not far from them, in order to not get in their way. So, I start to ask Rose, how have you been holding up lately? You look pretty shaken up after we ran into that Hydra, and you didn't seem to be doing well. Excuse me. And you didn't seem to be doing so well when the dragon attacked us, either. Rose blushes as she hears my question. Oh, you've noticed, she says, sounding a little embarrassed. Well, it would have been a little difficult to ignore, what with the whimpers and trembling and everything. As I finish my sentence, Rose punches me in my left arm, but she does so very lightly. I would have barely felt her touching me if I weren't paying attention. I'm starting to understand why Kate hits you so often, Rose says, smiling playfully. But thank you for your concern. As you may have realized, I've always been afraid of giant monsters. I'm accustomed with small and medium-sized ones, because I ran into several goblins and ogres during my travels. But the very thought of meeting a dragon in the flesh would always send chills down my spine. I never imagined that I'd come face to face with both a dragon and a hydra in less than one day. I knew they existed, but I hoped I'd never run into one of them during my lifetime. I can't imagine what it's like for people like Darren and Hadrick, who fight monsters like these on a monthly basis. She pauses. Come to think of it, this must all be pretty new for you too, isn't it? From what you've told me, you have never even fought a goblin before coming to this tournament. How are you always able to remain so calm despite the fact that you've had your entire world turned upside down? It's not calm, I'm just hiding a very good... Yeah, it's because I'm carrying a stat device with me. That first one's probably accurate. I'm not calm, I'm just very good. I'm very good at hiding fear. Modesty doesn't suit you, Barry, Rose says, smiling. If you were just hiding your fear from us, then you wouldn't have been able to confront the dragon yesterday and save us all. You were really gallant up there. You know, something that about the look you had in your eyes before you went to fight T-Wrath made me feel really safe and cast away all my fears. Once she stops talking, Rose suddenly realizes she was blushing, so she quickly turns her head away in a clumsy attempt to hide her face from me. Ooh. As I don't really feel like embarrassing her, I decide to ignore what happened and change the subject. So anyway, I tell her, there's something I've meant to ask you in private since this morning. What do you think about Flower? Rose turns her head back towards me when she hears my question, and I notice that her cheeks are no longer red. She seems somewhat surprised by my sudden inquiry. Do you mean in a general sense, Rose asks? To me, she seems like a charming young girl with a cheerful personality and a kind heart. And I find that she is a really fun person to be around with. What about you? There has to be some reason you asked me this. What do you think of Flower? A bit annoying. Yeah. She seems alright. I'll go with the bottom one. I think she's pretty fun too. I was just curious to see if you thought the same. It's too bad that Darren doesn't seem to share our opinion of her. Can you blame him though? Banshees aren't really known for their moral integrity, and the girl shares her body with one. Well, I for one trust Petal, but you haven't even talked to her. No, but Flower has. They've been living together for 20 years. If Petal still has Flower's trust after that much time, then that is enough for me. Maybe you're right. I don't think anyone could hide their true nature for such a long time. If the Banshee were up to something, she would have given herself away at some point during these past 2 decades. I mean, nobody can act that well, right? But you never know. While me and Rose were finishing our conversation, Darren and Hadrick were starting to work on the last 2 tents. Kate and Flower, who had just returned from their scouting missions, reported that there were no suspicious activity around the campsite, and they both took a seat on the log next to us. Once the tents have all been set, we decided to go to sleep early, in order to be well rested when we leave tomorrow. At the crack of dawn, Flower volunteered to take the first watch. And then she immediately went to climb the highest hill, to get a good view of the entire valley. As she passed me by, I could sense her aura weakening considerably, and the Banshee's aura becoming a lot stronger. Does that mean that this girl went to sleep and left the Banshee in charge of the night shift? If that is so, then this would be a perfect opportunity to get to know the Banshee a bit, before we reach our Ogre stronghold tomorrow. Aren't you going to sleep, Barry? Rose asked me, as she sees me just standing there. Yeah, I'll go the first one. Actually, I was thinking of staying up for a little while longer. I then whispered in Rose's ear that I know about Flower and Petal. I tell her that I want to have a little discussion with the Banshee before I go to sleep. Rose gasps. Barry, that's an excellent idea, she says. Hold on, just give me 1 second to leave my backpack inside my tent. I'll come with you. As the two of us make our way up towards where Flower went to oversee the valley, I start to realize that my intuition was right, and the girl really did go to sleep. I can feel that the outworldly aura around her is definitely the dominant one at this point in time. As we get closer, I see that her eyes are shining with a bright blue light, in the same way they did before, when the Banshee took control of her body. The girl is sleeping, Petal tells us, in a cold voice, as she sees us climb the hill towards her. I can wake her up if you need to tell her something important. The Banshee is sitting on the grass, cross-legged, with a sandwich in her hands. It appears that she was just about to start eating before she saw us come up the hill. Actually, you're the one we wanted to talk to, not Flower, I say. Is that so? The Banshee says, eyeing me up suspiciously. Well then, by all means, have a seat. She then takes a bite out of her sandwich while I seat myself in the grass next to her. Am I correct in assuming that you are Petal? Rose asks. My name is Rose. Pleased to meet you. She then offers the Banshee her hand. Actually, my name is Aluna, the Banshee says, without taking her hands off her sandwich. Petal is just a nickname that the girl gave me when she first met. Because I didn't want to give her my real name, she's been calling me that ever since. Seeing that the Banshee has no intention of shaking her hand, Rose smiles politely and takes a seat on the grass on the other side of her. So, I start to say, it's a really lovely weather we're having, don't you think? The Banshee frowns when she hears my question, and then turns her head towards me. Cut to the chase, human, she says. I've never been very fond of the roundabout ways in which you people like to start your conversations. You're here because you don't trust me to guard your camp by myself, aren't you? Yeah, that's about right. You're not wrong to be suspicious of me, Petal says. Not even I would trust another Banshee to have my best interests at heart without some very strong evidence to back up such a claim. After all, I've been traveling with a racker around my neck for almost 2 decades. There's some muffled sounds coming from Racker's amulet. Zip it, Petal tells her. I couldn't care less about what you have to say on the subject. You're not even going to try, are you? I ask Petal. Try what? She says. To get us to trust you. Why would I even bother to do such a thing? She asks. We're only traveling together because Flower decided to help you on a whim. Once you are free from your collars, I'm expected for us to part ways, and then never to hear from each other again. Given these circumstances, I see no reason why I should waste my time trying to gain your trust. Feel free to believe what you want of me, and I will do the same. I've been meaning to ask, Rose says. Where did you get that sandwich from? I've never saw you carry a backpack with you. I made it with magic, Luna says, as she waves her hand and magically conjures 2 more sandwiches that fall directly in our laps. Here, knock yourselves out. I take a look at the sandwich she conjured out of nowhere, and then grab it with both my hands, but I am a bit hesitant in taking a bite from it. I have no idea what ingredients she made this from. Could it be poisoned? Oh, for crying out loud, Luna says, when she sees me eye her sandwich up suspiciously. You're not seriously thinking that the sandwich is poisoned, are you? Who in the world still uses poison nowadays? Barring the hundreds of easily learnable magical protections that can provide you with immunity against all poisons, you can even buy anti-poison elixirs for 10 coppers apiece. Surely you must have drunk at least one of those before coming to this tournament. A single elixir should easily provide you with immunity for all known poisons for the remainder of this tournament. Just eat the damn sandwich, will you? Rose giggles. Now I understand why Flower told me you were always grumpy, she says, smiling playfully. Spectacular, Luna says. Is there anything else that girl shared about me while I was asleep? Well, she most certainly didn't tell me that you could conjure food out of thin air, Rose says. That is normally a skill only for Grand Priests of each city can master. You must be incredibly talented. Actually, I am ashamed to admit that Flower was the one who taught me this skill. Flower did? Yes, the girl has a natural talent of being able to instantly comprehend some ridiculously complex spells without even expending any effort whatsoever. She only saw the Spirit Fox cast a spell once, 20 years ago, and she managed to mimic it in the very next second. However, she is completely hopeless when it comes to learning spells that require the least amount of studying beforehand. I've been trying to teach her healing for years, but it's like trying to teach an ogre how to speak Lesethai. Wow. Rose smiles. See? She tells Aluna, you can actually open up to us if you try. The Banshee frowns at her. Congratulations, she says coldly. You have achieved your goal. Now will you finally go away and let me finish my sandwich in peace? You know, you look really cute when you frown, Rose says, smiling playfully again. Good grief, Aluna says. What would it take to make you go away and let me have my peace and quiet? It's hard enough to have to put up with Flower while she's awake. Can't I at least have some rest while she's asleep? Of course not, Rose says, with a cute smirk on her face. If we went to sleep now, then who would be left here to tease you all night long? By the gods, Luna says. It's as if Flower has the flowers have multiplied. Blah! We ended up spending the next few hours talking with Luna, and although on the surface she appeared to be annoyed by us, part of me felt that she was actually enjoying our company. In her own way, even if she maintained her grumpy demeanor throughout the night, the Banshee slowly started to open up towards us and even told us a few stories from her adventures with Flower in the past few years. It was later in the night that we were interrupted by Darren and Hadric, who came to take over our shift. Wait, wasn't Flower supposed to be the only one taking the shift? Hadric asked us, surprised. It seems that Flower maused us yesterday, Darren says, with a grave tone in his voice, because she apparently never intended to take on the shift herself. Aluna and Darren then spent a few seconds staring at each other in the eye, as if they were ready to jump at each other's throats at any second. You're not seriously going to start a fight here, are you? This is no joking matter, Barry, Darren says. Everything worked out fine because you and Rose figured out what happened, and went to keep a close eye on her. But who is to say that she wouldn't have slit our throats in the sleep if left unsupervised? There would be no need to use such underhanded tactics to rid myself of a handful of mages that can't even use magic, Aluna says. You and your friends pose no threat to me in your current condition. If you have a bone to pick with me, healer, then I would be more than happy to show you that I'm not bluffing. I will take you up on that offer, Banshee, Darren says, as he pulled out his sword. Let's see if you can fight as well as you run your mouth. Darren, wait, I shout, as I place myself between the two of them. Do you plan to kill the girl along with the Banshee? Just because the sword can't lock onto the Banshee's aura by itself doesn't mean I can't do it manually, Darren says. I can kill the Banshee without harming the girl if I focus hard enough. Have you gone mad, I ask him. How do you expect to properly target the Banshee's aura if the sword can't do it by itself? You're almost guaranteed to fail. If I do, then it would still be a better fate for the girl than to live her whole life chained to an evil spirit. Oh yeah? And who's going to lead us to the Ogre Stronghold when the girl dies? Or when the girl's gone? We already know in the general direction. I say we're close enough to our destination to be able to make it there, even without a guide at this point. Step aside, Barry. Yeah, I say with a laugh, as I pull out my dagger. That's gonna happen. Whoa ho ho there, friends, Hadric says. How about you both take a deep, long breath and think about what you're doing? Do you really want to end up like this, over some petty squabble? Wouldn't you rather have your names immortalized as legendary warriors who fought the greatest mage tournament in recent history than to be remembered as the idiots who died before the contest even started? Darren, please, Rose says, with a pleading look. Seeing that nobody is on his side, Darren finally decides to sheath his sword. I'm not going to fight you, Barry, he says. I was hoping to intimidate you into backing down. But I suppose that if you aren't the type to get intimidated by a Stillwater or a dragon, a sword isn't exactly going to do me much good. If you feel so strongly about this, then I have no choice but to leave the matters as they are. For now. You're right about Kate, so I can only hope that your instincts are right this time too. With these last words, Darren and Hadric walk past us and take their stations at the top of the hill, while me, Rose, and Luna head down towards our tents. The three of us descend from the hill without uttering a single word to each other. And when we reach Flower's tent, Luna turns her head towards me before going in. Your intervention from earlier was unnecessary, human, she tells me. I could have taken care of the healer without your help. Come on, don't be like that, I say. Friends should stick out for each other in their time of need. You seem to be under the false impression that you and I are friends. I assure you that you could not be any further from the truth. Love you too, Luna, the Banshee frowns at me. I will give you one warning, human, and one warning only, she says. Do not make the mistake of considering me your ally. Our affiliation is only temporary. It'll end the moment we finish our little trip together. You would be a fool to think otherwise. She then turns her back towards on us and slowly steps to her tent. Good night, Aluna, Rose says, waving, but the banshee gives no sign of having hurt her, and she closed the tent behind her. Well, I say that went pretty well, Rose says, smiling as we head to our tents. You think? I ask her. Of course I do, she says. Didn't you see how happy she was when you jumped to her defense earlier? If you managed to see past her grumpy facade, you can tell that she really isn't that much different from the rest of us. I think I'm starting to see a little bit of flower in you. There's a little bit of flower in all of us, Barry, Rose says as she points towards me. Yours just has to be buried underneath several layers of cynicism and sarcastic quips. Ha ha ha. Whoops. She smiles. Thank you for inviting me to join you tonight. I really appreciate it. Maybe we can do this again sometime. I see no reason why not, I say. Good night, Barry, Rose says, smiling. Sleep well, Rose, I tell her, as we both part ways and head to our respective tents. Once I get inside my tent, I fall asleep almost immediately. I never realized how tired I really was, until my head touched the pillow. I wake up a few hours later to the sound of footsteps and several tents being dismantled. Had a nice sleep, Barry, Hadrick tells me, with a grin as I step outside. I'll be taking back my tent if you don't mind. As he starts to dismantle the tent, I take a good look around me and see that everyone is already up on their feet, busy either with the tents or with packing their bags. The sun is just starting to rise, which means that we now have a little over 4 days left to finish our quest. I suddenly remember that I wanted to do a quick inventory of my backpack's contents before leaving, since I can no longer see what's inside of it due to Darren's enchantment. I start to take my items out of the backpack one by one by focusing on their image before reaching for them. I need to make sure that I don't forget anything. Maybe I should make a list. What the hell are you doing? Kate says as she approaches me. I'm doing a quick inventory, I ask her. I didn't really get a good look at all my items before Darren enchanted my backpack, so I just wanted to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. After looking at me for a few seconds, Kate grabs my hand, and then she uses it to tap 3 times on the inside of my backpack. Immediately after she releases me, a screen magically appears above my backpack, giving me a detailed list of all my items, with corresponding pictures for each of them. There's your quick inventory, Kate says. Now hurry up and put the stuff back in, or you'll get left behind. That is cool! Oh, I wish I had that in real life. Once we all finished what we had to do, we started marching yet again, with Flower leading the group, just like yesterday. This time, however, the 5 of us were a lot more silent than before. With the exception of Flower's occasional directions, we were barely any words spoken between the 6 of us in the first half hour of the journey. Did something happen while I was asleep, Flower asked, worried, after noticing that something is wrong. No, me and Darren both showed at the same time. Okay, Flower says, with an even more worried tone than before. From what I heard, Barry and Darren had a little fight last night, Kate says. Pay them no mind. I'm sure they'll get over it soon enough. After a few more hours of walking through the forest, Flower announced to us that we were starting to get closer to our goal. We decided that this was a good time to take a little break and talk about our strategy for infiltrating the stronghold. First things first, Darren says. We need to decide what to do with Rose during our attack. The way I see it, we have 2 options. Either we take her with us. Whoops! Never mind that. And yes, I am using a laptop, so don't hate. There we go. First things first, Darren says. We need to decide what to do with Rose during our attack. The way I see it, we have 2 options. Either we take her with us, or we leave her in a safe area outside the stronghold, with someone to act as her bodyguard, just in case. Anyone have any thoughts on this? I volunteer to stay behind and guard Rose, Kate says. I'm not sure how much help I can be in infiltrating the fort without any magic, but I should be able to handle a few ogre scouts on my own if they need be. It's probably safer to take it with us, stay all together. I think it would be safer to take Rose with us to the stronghold, I say. We've been told that the ogres have mages within their ranks. If even one of those mages happen to be in the scouting party, Kate will have no chance to beat them. The lad makes a good point, Hadrick says. It's too risky to leave Rose behind. I say we take her with us. If we manage to protect her in the ruins, we can do it here too. Darren turns towards Rose. Rose, is this okay with you? He asks her. Of course, she says. We've already been through so much worse together. I'll try my best not to get in anyone's way once we enter the fort. Before we make any concrete plans, Hadrick says, could we maybe go over the leopard's briefing one more time? His accent in common was horrible, and I'm not sure I got all what he said. Well, first of all, Kate says, the chalice we are meant to retrieve was used to give water unique healing properties, which could cure some illnesses that were incurable through the use of spells. The artifact itself looks like a regular golden chalice, except it has triangular markings on the sides. Regarding the stronghold's defenses, the leopard said the ogres are primarily divided between regular warriors that use big clubs to fight, and mages that have a variety of magical specialities. The most dangerous ones that we should be on the lookout for are their shaman, who should be easily recognizable by the multitude of tattoos inscribed on his body, and the stronghold captain, who is the only ogre warrior in the fort that wears heavy armor. That should be about the main gist of it. If this chalice of theirs is so important, I still don't get why the fox doesn't just storm the fort herself to get it back, Hadrian says. Isn't she supposed to be really powerful? Alea derives most of her power from the sacred woods throughout the continent, Flower says. When she steps outside the woods, she is not much stronger than most other animals. This is why the war between the animals and humans... This is why the war between the animals and monsters has been going on for decades, without reaching a conclusion. This is also why access to the sacred woods is forbidden for all outsiders. Getting back to the discussion at hand, Darren says, I believe that the next thing we need to establish is how we're going to retrieve the chalice. From what I heard, the stronghold is positioned on top of a hill, and all the trees in a mile radius from it have been cut down. There's no way we'll be able to sneak our way in. Maybe we could try to buy it from them, Rose suggests. It wouldn't work, Kate says. The ogres stole that chalice knowing full well what it was capable of. They're not going to give it away for any price. Well then, I guess there's only one option left, Hadrian says with a grin. We gotta go right through the front door. I'm afraid that we are left with no other alternative, Darren says. If we encounter any elementalists, leave them to me, Hadrian says. Since I focus mainly on shape-shifting magic, I've had to develop certain techniques that I can use in place of defensive spells while I am transformed. One of these techniques allows me to harden the magical aura around my body, which is not only great for defense, but also for attacking. If I use it to harden the magical aura around my fists, I can easily deflect fireballs with my punches and send them right back at their casters. Cool! My sword is also good against elementalists, Darren says. I can use it to absorb any element, and I also have the sword technique that can temporarily sever the mage's link to their magical plane, making them unable to cast spells for 30 minutes. Ha! Hadrian says. Who says mages need magic to fight? We'll conquer the stronghold of theirs in no time. If we all agree to attack the fort openly, then I guess there's not much more to discuss, Darren says. If there's too many things we don't know about the builder's layout and the distribution of their troops to be able to anticipate what will happen, we'll just have to rely on our instincts once the battle begins. If no one else has anything to add, then I suggest we get going. We still have a lot of ground to cover until we reach our objective. It was a few more hours later that we got close enough to the stronghold to be able to do a bit of reconnaissance. Flower and Hadrian went to scout ahead, while the rest of us looked for a good place to bury our backpacks, since it would be too difficult to fight with them on our backs, and we have no place to leave them while we're in the fort. Before burying my backpack, I made sure to take my crossbow out of it, since I'm sure I'll need it in the upcoming battle. After about 30 minutes or so, Flower and Hadrian returned to us with some rather unsettling news. It's dead quiet out there, Hadrian tells us. And I'm not just talking about the lack of patrols. I'm saying that there weren't even any ogres posted on the walls. Something doesn't add up here. The ogres may be stupid, but that couldn't possibly be this sloppy. Maybe they're onto us and we lure us into a trap. Maybe they caught them during lunch break. Maybe they've been in the fort. It's probably a trap. Maybe they're onto us and want to lure us into a trap. I agree, Darren says. We've been told their mages are quite capable, so it's entirely possible that they're using their magic to detect when anyone is approaching their stronghold. Unfortunately, we do not have the luxury to stand here and wait for them out until they get bored. Time is not on our side, and we can't really tell what they're trying to accomplish. Excuse me. Until we actually enter the fort. Let's just hope that our lack of any detailed plan regarding our actions once we've infiltrated the stronghold won't prove fatal to us. Oh, don't worry, Flower says. Me and Petal have a secret plan. It's sure to work. I see, Darren says. And would you by any chance have any intention of sharing this secret plan with the rest of us? No, of course not, Flower says, shocked. How would it still be a secret if we were just going to start telling everybody? Right, Darren says, in a dismissive tone. Well then, I guess this is it. This won't be an easy fight. Not by a long shot. We're going to be vastly outnumbered. We'll be fighting on unfamiliar terrain, and worst of all, we won't have our magic to help us. However, we've all had to go through hardships since the beginning of this tournament, and we've all somehow managed to pull through. It would be pointless to hold a last-minute strategy meeting now, given the extremely limited information we have on our enemy. Oh my goodness. Man, it's late. Woo! Our enemy. So instead, I will tell you this. Whatever you do, don't get yourselves killed. You worry too much, Darren, Hadric says with a grin. Nobody's going to die here. Most of us have already had our fair share of battles in the past. We haven't survived this long just to be taken out by a bunch of overgrown baboons in the middle of nowhere. We'll win this fight like we won many others. And by the end of the day, we'll all have another exciting story to share with our friends over a drink near the fireside. Let's hope you're right, Darren says. Flower, are you sure about this? Kate says. The fox only said you had to lead us to the stronghold. You've already fulfilled your promise. There's no need for you to risk your life for us any further. Oh, I could never live with myself if I just abandoned you here like this, Flower says. And besides, me and Petal have fought ogres before. They're not that tough. I don't think there'll be any problems. Hey everybody, in case you're wondering why it's light behind me and I have a different shirt on, I was doing the first 45 minutes of the video at nighttime and my throat was getting really sore and it was getting hard to keep talking. So I figured I would finish it during the daytime. I hope you don't get upset, but I figured why not, because it's usually they're pretty long videos. So here we go. With these last words, we all grab our weapons and start our final march towards the stronghold. It took us about 10 minutes to reach the end of the forest. The whole area around the fort had been completely cleansed of trees and all other vegetation to provide direct line of sight for the ogre patrols. The stronghold itself was placed on top of a hill, and it had a surface of maybe 1,000 square feet. Its walls were made of stone and had a height of about 30 feet, while the only visible entrance to the fort was a very large wooden gate that had been left wide open, giving us a clear view of the stronghold's inner yard. There seemed to be one main building in the middle, which was connected to all four of the walls that formed a square around it. Getting a closer look at the fort, we soon realized that it wasn't just the walls that were deserted, but the whole yard as well. They sure aren't trying to hide the fact that this is a trap, are they? Hadric asks, as we step through their open gates. Keep your guards up, Darren says, as he looks around. They could attack us from any direction. While we make our way inside the inner yard, Araka suddenly starts to make a very loud noise from inside her amulet. Oh no, you don't, Flower says. If I open the amulet now, you're just going to shout as loud as you can and give away our position to the ogres, aren't you? You're not going to fool me again. Araka makes an even louder muffled sound, and she doesn't appear to have any intention of stopping. She's already making a loud muffled sound, and chances are it's a trap anyway. So we might as well let her see what she's going to say. Flower, I say. It's clear that the ogres already know we're here. I don't think she wants to give away our position to them. Maybe she figured out where they're hiding and wants to let us know. Could you open the amulet to let us see what she wants? Well, if you say so, Flower says, as she opens the amulet. They're invisible, you idiots, Araka shouts with all of her might. As soon as we are able to hear her, they're invisible, and they have you all surrounded. Shoot them now. I aim my crossbow forward, and then I shoot an arrow in an empty space in front of me. Instead of going through the air, however, the arrow stops in mid-flight, and a trickle of blood starts coming out from its tip. Soon afterwards, a hideous creature begins to slowly materialize in front of us, with my arrow sticking out of its big belly. The monster is about 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin, and it is wearing nothing other than a loincloth around its waist. 2 of its lower fangs are sticking out of its closed mouth. Its forehead is exceedingly narrow, and on its face it is wearing one of the dumbest expressions I've ever seen in my life. The other ogres are now slowly appearing out of thin air, and it turns out that there's at least 100 of them, and they have us all surrounded. 2 of the ogres stand out from the crowd, one because of the excessive amount of tattoos on his body, and the other because of his heavy armor. They must be the shaman and the fort captain we've heard so much about. All the other ogres are wearing nothing but loincloths and holding big clubs in their hands, so it's a bit difficult to distinguish their mages from their warriors. Ooh, snap. The ogres surrounding us are all making loud noises and preparing their clubs, while we pull out our own weapons and get ready to fight. Before we get to engage the enemy, however, their captain roars loudly, and that makes all the ogres grow completely silent. They then step aside in order to make way for their shaman to pass. As he approaches us and then stops a few feet away from our position, while leaning on his wooden staff. "Welcome, brave warriors," the shaman says, in the common language. I don't know why I was saying shaman before. I don't even say it like that. In the common language. With a wicked grin on his face. "You don't often see humans wandering around these parts nowadays. I must say that you are certainly bold to have come here all by yourselves. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "There's no reason for us to explain ourselves to you, monster. Came here seeking the sacred chalice. We here..." Yeah, let's go with that one. "We came here because we'd like to join your merry group. If I were you, I'd beware of making such jests, human," the shaman says, still grinning. "As it so happens, we could use some slaves for manual labor in our fort, so your group would serve us well in this regard." "Like hell we're going to work for you, you ugly bastard," Darren says. "We're going to plow through your minions faster than you can even give an order to attack." "I see," the ogre shaman says. "Then I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to drop your weapons, humans. As of right now, you are our prisoners." "Yeah, that's not how this is going to work," Hadric says with a grin, as he readies his fists. "If you're not going to cooperate, then we have no choice but to force you into submission," the shaman says. "There will be no need for that. I hear Flower's voice coming from my left. As I look at her, I see that her eyes are bright blue again, and she has Luna's cold expression on her face. However, unlike before, this time the girl's aura is so weak that it pales in comparison to the Banshee's. I could barely feel any life force coming from it, as if she were some kind of dormant state. Immediately after Luna stops talking, a golden cage pops out of nowhere and it surrounds us all, leaving only the Banshee and the ogres outside of it. I believe you all still remember the spell that the fox used to trap you back in the ruins, Luna says. Luna tells us. I wouldn't even think about trying to break out of here without a teleportation spell of some kind. The golden cage is practically indestructible. She is not lying. Even without being a mage, I can tell this is an incredibly powerful spell. There's no way we're breaking out of here without any magic. What is the meaning of this, Banshee? Darren says, furious. What have you done with the girl? I put Flower in a stasis, Luna says. I've dealt enough with her idiocy for one day. In fact, I would say that I've dealt with it enough to last a lifetime. She then turns to the ogre shaman. Great shaman, she says. My name is Aluna. I am a Banshee. I've come here to offer you my services in exchange for access to the rare and unique books from your Stronghold library. As a token of my goodwill, I offer you these human intruders as tribute. You traitorous little... Darren starts to say, but he's interrupted by the captain of the ogres. Bold words for a puny prisoner, the captain shouts loudly in the common language, speaking with a very broken accent and grammar. What make Banshee think that ogre want your services? Don't be so rash, Captain, the shaman says. This isn't just any Banshee. This is Luna of the Sacred Woods Massacre. It is said that she killed hundreds of guardians of the forest in a single day, without showing the slightest amount of mercy. However, it is also said that she went soft ever since she fused with this little girl we see before us. The girl I share the body with has been treading the thin line between asset and liability for far too long, Aluna says. Her natural talents in the arcane arts made her a particularly powerful ally, but her whims overwhelmed her judgment more often than not, and she repeatedly puts us in mortal danger. Because of this, her decision to help these mages infiltrate your stronghold was the final straw. And it made me realize that I needed to rid myself of her quick, before she would become the end of me. And how do you plan on doing that? The shaman asked. I've heard of several shamanistic rituals that could help me with my soul fusion problem, the Banshee says. I only require some time to study in your library. I am sure that you will find a way to eliminate the girl for good, without harming myself in the process. Excuse me. In exchange for this favor, you offer us your loyalty, the shaman asks? Precisely, Luna says. Then I require you to do one more thing to prove you are being sincere, the shaman says, with a wicked grin. You'll have to execute your friends from that cage. Sadly, I cannot do that, the Banshee says. Killing them now will result in all of our deaths. How so? The shaman asks. These collars that they are wearing have been placed around their necks by the great golden fox, who is also the one who sent them here to steal your sacred chalice. Luna says. They are made in such a manner that if humans die, the collars explode, and those explosions would be powerful enough to easily level your fort and kill all of your warriors. The fox took this extreme measure to make sure that you all get eliminated even if the humans fail their mission. The shaman says, as he strokes his chin. I recognize these collars. They are made by the Lesathai of old. I know for a fact that these devices had some very dangerous self-destruct mechanism set in place in case the prisoners wearing them misbehave. He pauses. What do you propose we do with them then? He asks the Banshee. We wait, Luna says. The fox gave them 5 days to complete their quest. If they do not return in 5 days, she will assume they have abandoned their mission and they will die by electrocution. In this case, the self-destruct mechanism in the collars will not get activated. You've said enough, the shaman says. It's clear that you hold no attachment to your former allies. You are welcome to use our library as much as you please. Aluna of the Sacred Woods Massacre. We will discuss your payment after you rid yourself of the girl. As for these humans, I have a teleportation spell that can easily transport them into their cell, as long as they don't move from their position for a while. If you confirm that you can still hold on to that cage, I will start casting it. My cage will last for at least another few minutes, Luna says. However, I have one more warning to give you. The dwarf possesses a giant strength and can easily break through the walls of your prison without any weapons. I suggest you transfer them into one of the cells that have a paralysis spell cast on them. I visited the stronghold before, when I was owned by the goblins. No, when I was owned by the goblins? That doesn't make any sense. Huh. I remember that there was at least one such cell in the lower levels of this main building. You remember correctly, Banshee, the shaman says. Very well then. I will send them to one of the paralysis cells. He then starts casting his teleportation spell, and all of our bodies start to slowly vibrate, while we get covered in a bright white light. You bloody traitor, Hadric says, as he tries to bend the cage's bars with his bare hands. I can't believe you actually told them about my giant strength. Luna, how could you do this? Rose asked the Banshee, as a tear drops from her eye. I trusted you. Flower trusted you. How could you betray us like this? You are far too trusting for your own good, Rose, Luna says, with a frozen look in her eyes. I already warned you not to consider me your ally. You should have listened to your healer when you had the chance. Now you will pay for the price of your foolishness. The Banshee's cold look and Rose's tears are the last things I see before everything fades to black and we all get teleported to what may well become our final destination. Well, apparently it was only about 5 or 10 minutes away, but go figure that would happen to me. That was very interesting. Talk about a friggin' cliffhanger at the end. I really hope she's not bad. I was starting to like her. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.